I'm going to give a talk on the theme of fractal leadership. And I'd like to begin with a reading from Emergent Strategy, which is a book by Adrienne Marie Brown. So I invite you to bring awareness as we hear these words. A fractal is a never-ending pattern. Fractals are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales. They are created by repeating a simple process over and over in an ongoing feedback loop. And now we're going to ground this in a natural example as the reading continues. The micro reflects the macro and vice versa. Fibonacci patterns show up from space to cauliflower. The tiniest, most mundane act reflects the biggest creations we can imagine. That's Kat Aaron. Tune in to the prevalence of spiral in the universe. The shape and the prints of our fingertips echoes into geological patterns, all the way to the shape of galaxies. Then notice that the planet is full of these fractals. Cauliflower, yes, and broccoli, ferns, deltas, veins through our bodies, tributaries. All of these are echoes of themselves at the smallest and largest scales. Dandelions contain an entire community in each spore that gets blown on children's breath. How we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale. The patterns of the universe repeat at scale. There is a structural echo that suggests two things. One, that there are shapes and patterns fundamental to our universe. And two, that what we practice at a small scale can reverberate to the largest scale. And today I want to consider this pattern of the fractal, help us to really feel it and help us to see the fractal as a form of our leadership, our potential, and our action within ourselves and in the world. So for myself, one of the most powerful fractal images is the lung. As we breathe in, our lungs are like branches and we take in this air. And if you look at the scan or the inner image of the lung, it looks like a tree with two major branches and these little tiny leaves. And that's how the air comes in to our lungs. And then it's mirrored outside of us in the trees, which look like the inside of lungs. And the forests are really the lungs of the earth. And they have not only the fractal image of structure, but the same kind of purpose for respiration and breathing. So when I breathe, kind of sensing, I'm aware of this fractal. And then I'm also asking myself this question: where is our power as human beings? And for me, I feel it right here in my lungs, where my heart is. And this is where I feel a sense of calling. I feel a sense of connection with the web of life, with everything that I know that I'm connected with. And I feel that this is the core of where my potential is as a human being, and the core of where this fractal magic of humanity can really turn on. When there's something wrong in the world, it causes suffering. And there's this contradiction where life is being negated. And for me, that is the essence of suffering. And when I feel that contradiction, and it's like a strong feeling of pain in the heart, to me, that is at the essence of calling. And I want to give a few examples from our community, because I see our community as a place where we're fostering this kind of fractal leadership, of doing that inner work, of finding that pattern that feels so true, that feels so held in the heart, and then taking these small steps to bring it into the world, especially in a way that contradicts what is wrong in our world and brings light. And I mentioned this as light when I was lighting the candle before, but we live in a world that has some strongly embedded structures and patterns of harm and violence and suffering. And until we awaken to that power within ourselves, we're at risk of living as shadows of what already exists. Until we get in touch with that light within ourselves and the courage to bring it into our world, even in contradiction with those shadows. So in 2016, there was a terrifying string of shootings. And I don't know if you remember the Pulse nightclub shooting. It was very terrifying, especially for the LGBTQ community. And one of the amazing leaders in the spiritual center community, Maggie Sky, really felt this. She really felt this pain, not only for herself, but really for so many people in our world. She responded, and she really wanted to do something healing, to do something affirming, to take that light within herself and bring it out. And the action that came to her was to put up a rainbow peace flag, which when she was traveling once in Italy, she saw the rainbow Pace flags, and it connected with her deep longing for this world, that we would have a world of peace and equity, and we would have a compassionate world. And then when such a strong contradiction happens, when that violence breaks out, And it just kind of, you feel it, it's such a clash with the sense of call. And then there's an opportunity. And Maggie's told me this story many times. She wasn't comfortable being the only person to put up one of these flags on her block. She didn't want to be singled out. And so she was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a whole box of these flags. And I'm going to ask other people around, my friends and my neighbors, would you join me with this? And they did. And now there's the whole peace flag movement, and there's tens of thousands of people who have put up these flags and who have made this step within themselves to push against that resistance. Because within ourselves, we want to do this, but there's so much of this shadow. There's so much of these patterns of hate that we're living within. And it does take a lot of courage, and it does take a lot of support to even take a small step out of that pattern that exists and instead be living the pattern of the heart that we feel. Another example of this is Deborah Younger Mitchell's leadership, who we just heard from today, when George Floyd was killed. And Deb was deeply moved. And she felt a need to show up for racial justice and to make a statement and to work for something better. And then she just took a step by going online and telling everyone, calling everyone and saying, let's rally on the Common. I think it was at a Sunday at 3 p.m. And hundreds of people responded to that. And they felt what she felt, and then they came and showed up. And that's fractal leadership. It's the move in the heart to care, to feel, to dream, and then to share that feeling with others. And that's the true source of our power as people. It's within that fractal we're forming and we're coming alive to within ourselves, that pattern of our humanity and our divinity. And when we bring that into the world, then other people respond, and then you form that fractal pattern in a whole group of people. And then, just like Maggie and Deborah, they're tending to it. Like, okay, how do I hold this formation with a group of people? How do I hold this formation in a bigger way? That same feeling I have, but with other people who are each unique in their own ways. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do. Another example that recently showed up in my world is Kristen Wyman, who's not from Natick, doesn't live in Natick, and she's not part of the Spiritual Center, but she gave this amazing presentation because she's on this committee about the dam we have on the Charles River. And Kristen is someone of Natick Nipmuc descent. So she has a connection to this land, and she has a connection to the river. And in her own journey, which she shared, it was very eloquent. She had to discover her indigenous identity, which had been so kind of, submerged through all these patterns of oppression and silencing and burying of indigenous culture. But she rediscovered through, visiting the waterways, through collecting those stories from people in her community, through doing graduate study and reading and connecting with her culture, so that she could come and be part of this Natick Dam Advisory Committee, because we have a dam, this cute little spillway blocking up the Charles River in South Natick that is unsafe. And there's a big question about whether it should be removed so the river could be restored to its natural flow, which would be wonderful for the fish and for the whole natural environment. And what was amazing was she showed up and said, My ancestors have always asked that this river not be dammed because of the fish, because we need the fish to survive. And we use, the fish carcasses to plant the corn. And these are our traditions, and we have a right to food sovereignty. And so we're asking here and we're asking everywhere in Massachusetts that these dams be removed so that the rivers can flow. And even there, it's like a big fractal pattern there, because you see like the river and the dam. And, we have these rivers running through us in our veins. And somehow we need to let this truth flow. We need to have, let nature flow. We need to kind of release within ourselves those dams that prevent us from healing, prevent us from feeling anything, prevent us from accepting the flow of life that wants to go through us. So today, I want to leave our community with this message that we're not a community that is content to just live in conformity to what exists. We're not here to live as shadows of a colonized world, or shadows of a capitalist economy, or shadows of even a white supremacist society. That's not why we're here. We're here because we have a growing awareness, and it's a felt awareness of a beautiful truth that we carry. And we're here to form our own fractals within ourselves, find that pattern of compassion and understanding and love, and find that within ourselves. And then to bring it into the world, and even in our own community. It's like the community that we're building at the Spiritual Center is built through one relationship at a time, like one relationship where we practice non-judgment. It's first of all with ourselves, practice forgiveness, support someone's best self. This is for ourselves first, but then it's just one other person in the community, just being a friend to one person, just being present or support or going the extra distance with another person. And then that just spirals out. And that's how community gets formed. And then together we see a fractal, like an image or taking shape, or like a pattern taking shape. And then we're going to try to hold that together. Like we're going to try to hold a pattern in this community that resonates with what we've got in our hearts. And each person is so different. I can't emphasize this enough. We're not here even as a community to conform to some ideology of the community. Conformity will never be the way for us. It's like each person being alive in a unique way, but we have something in common that we're co-creating. Adrienne Marie Brown has some beautiful wisdom on this. She says, if you've got everybody kind of thinking the same and acting the same towards the same goal, you've got a cult. But if you've got everyone thinking differently and being themselves, but somehow working together to do something, then you've got a movement. What's what we want? We want a movement of people who are alive and are feeling and are willing to go to their calling. That's an inner journey. Michelle Cromwell, one of our first, our first moderator, said, this is a 1-foot journey from head to heart. That's the biggest journey that we all have to make, just there. Then once you're in the heart and you're feeling that calling, that's where the good stuff really starts to come. And this is all what we're doing in this community. It's the 1 foot journey to get in the heart. It's a constant calling back, because we're always kind of departing from it, but we're coming back to it. We're coming back to what we are really here for, crafting the most beautiful way of living that we can do within ourselves, and then trying to bring that out and supporting each other. And that, I just want to affirm that there's a tremendous power in this because of this fractal nature of things. Just the same way you see, with Maggie, with Deborah, with the way just one person bringing that true power into the world and how other people respond. Not power over, it's power with. It's just a beautiful reciprocal response. And for our community here at the Spiritual Center, it's like the more we could hold this pattern, create something beautiful in the way that we exist with each other, that just calls to people. And it does have a power. And when it really connects with the heart and it's aligned, it has a pattern to recreate itself at a larger scale. And so I want to affirm and just bring our awareness to the heart, to our own journeys, to really feeling that power that we have, and then to trusting that when we really take that courage and find the support to bring it out, that it does have this fractal pattern. It does unlock responses and collaboration and reciprocity and the compassion that we want and the more just world that we want. We have an incredible power to be moving towards that within ourselves, in our one-on-one relationships with each other, in these small groups we have, and then in the ways that we come into the world.